Hi, this is Sonia from An Enthusiastic Reader. Today I'm doing the 10 books tag, the Scribd/Kindle version. This tag was created by Shawn the Book Maniac, and he tagged me in his most recent iteration of this tag. He only used Scribd as his inspiration for talking about books that he has not read but would like to read. And since I just joined Scribd a few months ago, my Scribd saved list isn't very long or robust, so I chose a few books from the Scribd save list, and I also went to my Kindle library where I have so many books that I've acquired over the years that I haven't read, so I'm kind of using that as well as a pool to talk about 10 books that I am interested in and why. My first book that I would like to talk about is called Literary Life, a Second Memoir by Larry McMurtry. And I just have my iPad here, and I pulled up the Goodreads pages for all of these books so I could talk a little bit about them. This is essentially from his earliest inkling of his future career while at Rice University to his tenure as a Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford to his incredible triumphs as a best-selling author. Larry McMurtry reminiscing about his literary life. I'm always up for a good literary memoir, and so that's on my list. Hi, the second book on my list is Hilary Mantel's book called Every Day is Mother's Day. It was written in 1985. It was her first published novel. I am slowly getting into Hilary Mantel more and more. I loved, of course, Wolf Hall and Bring Up the Bodies. I also adored her memoir, which is Giving Up the Ghost, which that was a very successful and really interesting look at her life, her illnesses, and the misunderstanding of her illnesses, also the way she was kind of mistreated by her stepfather, and a psychic experience that she had that all come together into this really interesting memoir. I also read Beyond Black by her last year, and I liked that a lot, and that was about a psychic who was actually a psychic. And this book, Every Day is Mother's Day, is also about a medium and her misfit daughter, and so I think it's a little less focused on the actual ghosts that may exist and that are coming through the medium, and more about the dysfunctional life of this mother and daughter. I like to see the origins of somebody's writing, and so reading a first novel, even if it's not perfect or no one talks about it, is a good way to get introduced into that history of writing and see how it has progressed through the years. The third book on my list is The Story Prize, 15 Years of Great Short Fiction, edited by Larry Dark. And the Story Prize is a yearly short story prize contest, and it has been won by many notable writers, and this is an anthology collecting some of the best of those winners, including Edwidge Danticat, Patrick O'Keefe, Mary Gordon, Elizabeth McCracken, Claire V. Watkins, Anthony Doerr, Adam Johnson, and Rick Bath. I know I've read a few of these stories over the years that are in this anthology and wanted to revisit them. I really loved Claire V. Watkins' Battleborn, the collection of short stories. Really good, all about Nevada in various times in history and economic situations, lots of job-related short stories, and the past coming back to haunt the present. So I think I don't know if she still likes and stands by that collection, but it was really one of the strongest short story collections I ever read. So one of her stories from that collection is in this anthology. And Elizabeth McCracken, Thunderstruck, another short story collection that I don't think there was a dud story in that collection, and one of those stories is in this. So it's kind of a good way to get introduced to some writers that you may have heard of but not read, or get introduced to some of their collections if you like short fiction. The next book on my list is Leaving the Atocha Station by Ben Lerner. I love autofiction. I love the trend of it. I like Rachel Cusk and Ben Lerner. I read 1004, and I thought, I don't know if I got it completely, and I do need to read it again, but I know that this Leaving the Atocha Station is also very similar to 1004. And since I like that so much, I wanted to go check this one out. It was written in 2011 and published by Coffee House Press, which is a independent publisher who does a little bit more esoteric fiction. So, Next, we have The Emissary by Yoko Tawada, published in 2014. This is Japanese translated fiction. It won the National Book Award for Translated Fiction in 2018, and let's see what it says. Here's what led me to put it on the list. A delightful, irrepressibly funny book. It is filled with light. Yoko Tawada, deftly turning inside out the curse, defies gravity and creates a playful, joyous novel out of a dystopian one with a quality all uniquely her own. That sounds good to me, so I'm going to read that. The Heather Blazing by Colm Toibin is my next book on the list. This was his first novel, published in 1992, and so 1992 he was already thinking about things falling into the sea. I've read many books by Colm Toibin, including his retelling of the Clytemnestra Agamemnon saga, and The Master is one of my favorite books. Brooklyn, I also loved. Nora Webster, I adored. I think he is able to capture characters and capture loneliness like no one else. So I wanted to see where his origins of novel writing began with Heather Blazing. Now we have Edward P. Jones's Lost in the City. This was published in 1992, another 1992 work. It's a few years before The Known World, which you all know if you've watched anything on my channel or on several other people's channels. The Known World is kind of had a little renaissance on BookTube for a few people anyway recently, because we did a group read, and his writing was so good and so strong, I decided I wanted to read this short story collection. It was a finalist for the National Book Award in Fiction in 1992, and it is a magnificent collection of short fiction focusing on the lives of African American men and women in Washington, D.C. So 2013 brought us a book of interconnected short stories called Fools by Joan Silber. I have talked about Joan Silber before, but I have not read this collection. When is it wise to be a fool for something? What makes people want to be better than they are? From New York to India to Paris, from the Catholic worker movement to Occupy Wall Street, the characters in Joan Silber's dazzling new story cycle tackle this question head on. I've read other books of hers, including Improvements, that has that same kind of story cycle. The characters are not necessarily all related, and there might be a tiny bit of overlap, but each story does stand on its own as well as a work of fiction. So I bought that. That's on my Kindle. My 9th book on my list is Mrs. Bridge by Evan S. Connell, published in 1955. The wife of a successful lawyer in 1930s Kansas City, India Bridge tries to cope with her dissatisfaction with an easy, though empty life. And then there's the companion novel, Mr. Bridge. Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman did make a movie about this, and I do think maybe I did see it, but I remember absolutely nothing about it. So I've always wanted to read at least one of them, if not both of them. So if I love Mrs. Bridge, then I will follow through with Mr. Bridge. And the very last novel on my 10 books tag Scribd Kindle version is Accordion Crimes by Annie Proulx. I've read several Annie Proulx novels, and this one seems like it might be a precursor to Barkskins in that it follows the life of an accordion through all of its owners through time. And it's a masterpiece of storytelling that spans a century and a continent. Proulx brings the immigrant experience in America to life through the eyes of the descendants of Mexicans, Poles, Africans, Irish Scots, Franco-Canadians, and many others, all linked by their successive ownership of a simple green accordion. So it sounds a little bit like the Barkskins novel that I probably will never read. It's too daunting for me to read a book that long about trees. That sounds terrible that I would say that, but I don't think I'll read it. So, but I do love her writing. The shipping news And that old Ace in the Hole, my favorite book of Annie Proulx is Postcards. I even have a little, it's like neat little square edition of that book that I love. I really like her writing. I like the way that it's funny, it's sarcastic sometimes, and it really hones in on character and another person who can capture loneliness and the awkwardness of life and still laugh at it and also be tender about it. That's it for my 10 books, and I will see you soon in the next video. Tag yourself if you'd like to do this. It's kind of fun to go through and see what you haven't read but you were thinking about reading. And I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.